Today's webinar is on Sales Reports 101, and there are a lot of reports that we're going to be covering. So without further ado, we'll go right into FrameReady. And here's our FrameReady. The main area that we're going to be focusing on is in this invoice block in the top right-hand corner. Now, before we go there, I do want to show you that it's the invoice screen that if things are missing, you want to double check. So on the invoice screen, if you are missing that you had a consignment and you should have checked that it was a consignment, that you would want to do that to check that box, and you'll need to do that in the data entry section. The other thing that sometimes people are missing is the sales rep name. Hopefully that isn't anymore missing because it's mandatory. Also, if you're in this screen, if you haven't checked the consignment, you want to make sure that everything has a category. Sometimes what happens is people will manually enter something onto an invoice and they'll go ahead and put the quantity and the unit price, but they don't put the category in. And you can click on the down arrow here to select something that's already in one of the known categories. If this is something that is missing from that category list and you want to add it, you can simply type in anything into this box and it would be in that box for you to have. So those are the things that I find people miss sometimes on the invoice, and I want to make sure that you know how to fill those in. So let's go back to the main menu. And on the main menu, we're going to start with the sales reports, and then we will go through these others as well. If we click on sales reports, there are a lot of different ones that people use, but the ones that we use the most are probably the end of day reports. I know a lot of people like those. So let's start there. And if you click on end of day reports, you'll see that there's also a button to go to the other sales reports as well. Now on this listing, it's automatically going to enter in today's date. What's great about this, though, is that if you didn't get a chance to enter yesterday's reports, you can always go back and do those instead. So I'm going to do that now, and we'll say we want to select all of these. If there's some of them that you don't want, you can simply uncheck the box. And once you know something about the reports, you can decide which ones you want to view and which ones you don't want to view. Those options will stay. I usually like to say pause on preview and show print dialog box, but I'm going to show you another tip, and that is that, and there's a tool tip for this, if you hold your mouse over top of the proceed button, it's going to tell you to hold down the control key. And if you press the control key, then you don't have to print each of these documents. You can just look at them. And that's what we're going to do. Pressing down on the control key, I'm going to click the proceed button, and now I'm going to be in the preview of the document, and I don't have that option to print it, which is nice. So this is a listing, as it says, invoice details of every single invoice that was generated on that day, and all of the people, the subtotals, the discounts given, the sales total, the tax amount on it, and then over on the right-hand side, the total. The absolute total, the grand total, is up at the top of the screen, so that if you have multiple pages of this, the total is going to be on the first page. You're not flicking through a whole pile of pages trying to find out what the total is. Moving from the invoice details, we're going to go to the next document on there. And I'm going to click continue, and it just moves directly to that. This is the sales by category, and it's separated by tax, whether things are taxable or tax exempt sales. And if you have multiple taxes, then you'll have two tax amounts showing. So you may have something that's not taxable for the city tax or not taxable for state tax, and those will show up separately. And since the only heading that I've typed in is tax, that's why you're seeing the word tax. Whatever heading you've put into the setup data, that's the heading that you're going to see on this screen and on all the printed documents that you have. So this is sorted by category. We have our dollar amount before the discount, if a discount was given, what the discount amount was, the total showing the discount, and then there's also a wholesale cost column as well. Anytime you see the word cost, that is the wholesale cost of the product. And anytime you see price, that's the retail price. So that's the terminology that we're using. If you haven't entered in anything in the cost, then that's why it's showing up that the amount is 0. So you want to make sure that you do that entry when you're setting up those retail products that you're selling. Also, if there is something at the top, anytime you see the word miscellaneous, it should always be a 0, because those are the items where someone didn't enter in a category. And so it's gone into the miscellaneous because we try to catch it whenever possible. Moving up to the top again, we're going to click on Continue. And now we have our receipts or refunds sorted by tender. And this is showing us all of the entries that you have entered in the tender field on the invoice screen. And you can edit those and change those. There's certain items that you shouldn't change, and we'll take a look at those in just a moment, but there are others that you can definitely add in. And each of them will be listed. The subtotal will be on the right-hand side. If it was a check that they used, you could type in the reference number. You can also type in under the reference number the authorization number, but we certainly do not recommend that you enter in anybody's credit card information. Okay, this is only for authorization numbers or a refund number or the check number. Moving on to the next report, we're going to take a look at what was received on account. So this is giving us, again, the invoice number, the total, the person, and then the tender of these items. So this was outstanding payments that people had, and they paid us for those items, so we received those on account. Now we're going to move on to the next report, and this was a great report. This is our daily summary report. It tells you at a snapshot what's happening in your business right now. So as of today, these are the total sales that we received today. I also sold a gift certificate yesterday, so that's on there as well. And with the tax amount, this is the total money that the business brought in. But if we look down here, this is another way of looking at the exact same dollar amount. And there's a gentleman who told me that if he had had FrameReady and saw this number, he would have known what was happening in his business. Because what happened was he was deciding to expand his business, and he thought, well, the total sales number is the same, everything is good, I'm good for this expansion. What he didn't realize was that the money coming in, which is this first number, was getting less and less and less. And the money that was charged to the account was getting higher and higher, so that his available cash that he had to work with was getting less. So this is the number of what you actually received that day. This is what was charged to account. You don't have this money, but we're hoping that it's going to come in. Okay, and then this is either gift certificates, store credits, or used on today's invoices, so that someone used one of those. And that was money that you had that had already been paid to you and you've used it. Okay, but the two numbers will be the same on each of these. Moving down to the bottom, this is telling you that this is the amount that you received today, which was the cash that came in. Again, that amount matches up at the top. What was received on account from outstanding money that came in. Lots of money came in this case, and that was taken off of our accounts receivable. And then this is the amount that we're actually going to deposit in the bank that day. Underneath that, though, is the amount of either a gift certificate or store credit or something that was used. And you can see that that's the same amount that's up here at the top. So this is our snapshot, how your business is doing at a glance report. Let's go on to the next one, and that was the last one, except for this one. This is a listing of all the retail items that were sold during that day. And if you wanted to print this one out, you can. If you decide you don't need it, it all depends on if you have a lot of small items that you're selling. Do you do a lot of retail sales for art supplies, giftware, or anything like that? But there are other reports that you could use to get that information as well. I'm going to click the Continue button. And we're going to go back to the invoice screen, because I did mention that you have the ability to change the tender, but there are certain tenders that you don't want to change. So if I go down here to enter a payment, when I'm down here, of course, this person has a store credit, and if I wanted to apply the store credit to this, I could. I'm going to say no, because really what I want to do is show you the tender list, so that if you have the items in here and you want to change any of them, you can simply by going down to the bottom of the list and clicking on the edit. However, there are certain items in here that you should not change. Items such as gift card or gift certificate and reward points, because the program uses these things, and store credit as well. It uses those items for all of those features, basically. So if you are using a gift certificate, it's going to look for that tender, and then the item number in the reference field for that gift certificate in order for it to work properly. Down here at the bottom are the refunds that you're doing. So if you're giving cash back, you're doing a refund for cash back, you're doing a refund for a Visa, it's going to be using those as well. Other things that you may want to add in there are bad debt, so you can clear out any bad debt. But then if you decide that you don't use Discovery or American Express, or you want to change the way that something is spelled, then all you need to do is go down, click on the word edit, and you can change and modify those items in the list. And then just click OK, and now your list has been customized. Let's go back. So back to the main menu. We're going to go back into sales reports, because the next item that we want to look at is going to be the weekly and monthly and year-to-date reports. And I had scheduled us to do the poll here, but we're just so early into it. But that's okay. Go ahead, Carl, if that's all right. Let's go ahead and run the first poll that we have.
All right, and here we go. Which reports do you use? End of day reports, accounts receivable, report by artist and consignment artists, monthly or quarterly reports?
And are there any questions so far, or comments, questions? Really
yes, question came in. What's the difference between store credit and gift certificates?
Okay, there's a big difference between those. The gift certificate is something that you can, something that someone will purchase from you, and you can print out the gift certificates in FrameReady. There are 3 different designs that you can use. And so someone has paid you money, you're holding that money in trust for them until the person that they give that gift certificate to comes in and makes a purchase with it. Store credit is different though. Store credit means that the customer perhaps overpaid, or they've returned an item, and rather than giving them a refund, you're going to give them a store credit, which means that you're going to hold the money in trust for them, and then when they want to come back and purchase something, FrameReady will automatically come up with that store credit and say, this customer has a store credit, do you want to apply that credit to this invoice? So in both cases, you're holding money for them, but in one case, a customer came in and gave you money specifically for a gift certificate or a gift card so that they can give it to someone else, which is great. It's the gift of a new customer coming into your business. Store credit is the other side of that, which is a customer overpaid and you need to give them money back, and rather than giving them a refund on Visa or cash, you're going to hold a store credit for them. There we go. Oh, wow. Monthly reports are really popular. Okay. And accounts receivable, yep, quarterly, end of day reports. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for voting on that. We're going to go back into FrameReady again. We're going to take a look at the weekly, monthly, year-to-date reports. And if we take a look at the weekly reports here, it does give you that number. I know some people on their calendar, it's going to automatically put in the current week. And some people, their calendar will show what the weeks are as you go down the list. So you can do that. And you can go back to previous years as well. Again, if you click proceed and you hold down on that control key, this is another time when you don't need to click the continue button and print out each report. So very similar to the report that showed you the invoice details, it's showing you everything for the week. So it depends on how busy your shop is, whether you want to use a weekly report or a monthly report, but both of those are available to you. And then of course it goes to the next report on that, which is the sales by category sorted out by the taxes. Again, we talked about these 3 columns. Same thing, if you haven't filled in the wholesale cost, then it's not going to show you a dollar amount in that column. There's the retail items sold that were through the week. So a lot of the reports have multiple pages to them. In this case, you don't have the option to say, I only want to print one of these and not the other. But you do have the option to say continue and then choose not to print the report. The difference between the weekly report and the monthly report is that when you pull up the monthly report, the first thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get something called a clip. And if you're wondering what the clip is and how it's calculated, on our FrameReady Help website, we have a little explanation of it. What is a clip? And basically what it does is it takes whatever the number of days are that you've been open for that month. So today is the 10th, and that means that for all the sales that I've had up until that time, it's going to look at the number of days and say there are 10 days. It's going to divide the amount by 10, and then it's going to say there are 31 days in the month. It's going to multiply that divided number by the number of days in the month, and it's going to come up with the projected sales clip. So that if everything goes exactly the same as it has at the start, then it would give you that number. Some people said that, you know, if you wait till the end of the month and you run it, it doesn't give you the exact same number, and it can't. It's because it's not taking into account how many days of the week you are open. So it doesn't necessarily know that if you're open 7 days a week or only 4 days a week. And, you know, it could be that you were open, the month starts on Friday and you had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you were closed for a couple of days, and now we're on the fifth day of the month, but you've only been open 2 days really. So it is a projection. It's just a little number. If you want to use it, that's great. Sometimes people like to just take a look on it to see how am I doing so far. And that's the whole intent of it. And that's why it was put there. We're going to click on continue. And we've got the exact same report that we had for the weekly report, giving all of the invoice detail, giving all of the invoice details with the totals up at the top of the screen. And then, of course, if we click continue, we're going to get the listing of the summary of the tax sales. So it's a listing of every invoice that we have in there with the dollar values up at the top of the screen for the month. And then here's the category report separated by the taxable amounts as well, and the retail sales amounts. There we go. So those two reports are pretty popular. People use them quite a bit. There's also the year-to-date report. Now, one of the things that's really important about the year-to-date report is that you verify your fiscal year start date. And if you do not see that date at the top of the screen here, then you want to go back to the setup data, okay, and go to fiscal, and you'll see it up at the top of the screen here. And this is where whatever you want your taxes to say, if you want it to say tax 1 and then in this box it would say tax 2, or if this is C tax for city tax and this is S tax for state tax, that's where you can change those headings as well for your tax reports. But we'll go back into the sales reports and make sure your fiscal start date is correct, and then we go to year to date, and it's starting on that date that was entered in there. And once again, I'm going to press down on the control key and we'll get our year-to-date report. Again, these reports are very similar in layout and design, but it's just covering a different time period for each of them as we go through. And there's our retail items sold for the year. There we go, and we're back out. Okay, let's go back in here and take a look at the quarterly reports, because that's another one that people will look at. And if you were looking at the quarterly reports, it's based again on that date up at the top of the screen. Okay, and you can print out any of the quarterly reports, and rather than go through them and make them a little bit bigger, there's the first report that comes up, which is again, those same categories that you've entered in, and these are the categories that are being pulled from the invoices that have been generated. Okay, and then the second report that comes up is again a different sort of layout for it, showing the exempt sales and the taxable sales. So it's just a variation on that. So let's go and take a look, because there's two other reports here that are interesting. There's the commission sales report, and then there's also a sales rep report that we can take a look at. Now, for the commissions report, you do need to do some setup for that. And the place that you would set that up is in the Options tab, and then we're going to go to More Options. And down in the bottom left-hand corner here is where we have our Commissions button. And when you click on Commissions, then you can add in a person's name and then decide what the amount or the percentage is that you're going to give them as a commission. And it knows that if I changed it today, then any invoice that's created by that person would have that new commission amount on that specific invoice. If you needed to add a new person into the list, you can click on New Record. If you wanted to remove someone from the list, then you just click on Delete Record, and it's going to delete the one that's highlighted. Okay, we'll click Done, and let's go take a look at that commission report. So that if you did want to reward the people who were making sales for you, the commission report can be done for any time period. If you decided that you wanted to do it for an entire year, you could do that, or if you wanted to do it for a specific month, then you can do that as well. And I don't know if the control key is going to work there or not, but we'll give it a try. So the first page that's going to come up is going to be by individual person, so that this would be just that one employee, and then you would be able to attach a check to that, or give them this document, email it to them, and include it in their pay. And the dollar values are up at the top. This does not include tax, so they're not receiving a commission on the taxable amount. It's on the amount pre-tax that they're receiving commission on. And then if we go to the next page, you'll see that each person is listed on there individually. Okay, and so that if I was to print this out, I would have all three of those printed. However, the next page that I go to shows me all three of them in just a summary of, without all the details. And this was, we used to just have this version, and then people were saying employees wanted to know where did that number come from, because they thought something else should have been added on there for their commission, or they were waiting for something. And this is based on the amount that's been paid on that invoice. So let's go back and click on Continue. And we're going to go and take a look at the other report now, because we've got another one down here called Sales Rep. And very similar, but it's not based on a percentage at all. So that if I wanted to get a report just for a particular month, okay, for the sales reps, then what I've got is the report just for this month on what they've done. Okay, and there's nothing on there about percentages. So it's just a quick snapshot to see. And this too is, again, before taxes, to find out how much that person has brought into the. Go ahead, Carl.
All right, let's switch over to which reports do you use? Work order report, best customers report, payment report, commissions report, supplier of retail products.
Results. Oh, work order report. That's an awesome one. And it's not really part of the sales reports. There's a whole document on the work order report in our online help that explains how to read that, how to look at it. It's important to know that that one is not based on sales. That's based on the work orders that were created. They may not have been posted to an invoice yet. So that's an important distinction on that. Okay, best customer payment report, great. Commissions, great. So we're going to go back into FrameReady again, and this time what we're going to look at is the artist report over on the left-hand side. And this could give you two different reports for the artist. One is that it's just every artist that you have in here, or it could just be the consignment artists that you want to deal with. And again, when you're entering in the date ranges, I know, and I've shown you a few examples already, so that if you didn't want to enter in, you know, the entire date, you don't have to. You don't have to put the ending date if you want to go up to today. Or the opposite, if you put in today's date and put 3 periods in front of it, that would be since you've been running the program. That's what that would mean. But we're going to click on consignment to say, let's take a look at the consignment artist. Or if you just wanted to look at one specific artist, you could select that artist's name from the list. But we're going to go ahead and click proceed. And it will ask you if you want to print it without page breaks or with page breaks. And the idea of having it with page breaks is that each artist would receive their own page. You could email that to them, save it as a PDF if you want, or print it out, and then you'll be able to see the different reports for each artist that you've been working with. So we'll click continue on that. And let's go back to sales reports again. And this time I want to take a look at the category report. Now the invoice category report is pretty much the same as the other one that we've looked at. If I left that blank, it's going to do everything from all time. So I'm just going to go in and say 2020 without putting anything in there. And you'll see that it auto formats as soon as I leave the screen. So I'm going to click proceed again. And then without page breaks this time, so that it puts everything onto one. And you'll see that this is giving me the report by category that's appearing on the invoices. So as I go through, you can see the different categories on there. The difference on this one is that it also includes the invoice number and the date of the invoice. So that's a little bit of extra information that isn't on the usual category report. So we've got a little bit extra. So the next one is the snapshot, synopsis, just a shortened view of the exact same report without all of the details. So sometimes this is a better report, less paper to print, easier to and more concise to see. But if you did need to go into the details, you have the details available to you. Okay, let's go in and take a look at the supplier report. I have to say I haven't looked at this one too much myself either, simply because this supplier report is not for picture framing. This is for the suppliers of the products that you're using in the product file. So that if we were to click on that one without page breaks, it's going to give me all of the artware companies that I deal with on there. Okay, and then again, if there are items on there that you don't have a supplier listed, they'll be listed below that. Sometimes what's nice is that if you decide that you don't want to print out everything, you could say when you're printing, just continue and print page 1 of 1 or print page 3 and 4, so that you don't have to waste paper if you did want a paper copy of what you're looking at. So let's take a look at the reports that are now on this main screen here, going into some of the more accounting reports. This report here this gives you two options depending on whether you're using the cash system of accounting or the accrual system accounting. So you could be doing either cash or accrual accounting. When you click on the payment report, and it's going to ask you for a date range, if you leave it empty, it remembers the last time that you clicked on this report and printed it out. Otherwise, you could do the exact same thing and say, I just want to do a date range for the year, or I just want to find out for this last month, and put that in instead. And we'll go for the month on this one. And when I get my payment report, it's going to give me a list of all of the payments that were made during that time. So if I've got it for the day or the month or the week, whatever it is, I'm going to be able to get the subtotals for each of the types of payment and then the total down at the bottom, as well as gift cards that are on here and store credits. Remembering that these are items that are in trust that you are holding for people, okay? And moving on to the next portion of this, this is the one that if you are doing cash system of accounting, where you only want to pay taxes on the amount of money that you have actually received, then you can do the cash system of accounting. And this is going to break it down to say, this is the money, the amount of cash that was paid on each of those dates on this report. Here's the total. Here's the non-taxable portion, and then this is the taxable portion, and then this is the amount of tax for this taxable portion. Okay, so that basically this is the amount of tax that you would be paying. This is the taxable amount. So what it's doing is it's backing those numbers out of the total over here, and these three numbers here will add up to the total on the left-hand side. So your non-taxable, your taxable amount, and then the tax that is applied to that amount. If you only have one tax rate, you can ignore the portion that's over on the right-hand side. It will all be zeros. I do have numbers in there because I did have 2 taxes in, and then I took the 2 taxes out. So that's why there are numbers over on the right-hand side. If you are using the cash system of accounting, just be aware that one of the hazards, your accountant will let you know if it's a good choice for you or not, whether you're using accrual or cash. And I'll just go mention that one again in a moment. This is the sales based on the category again. So we've got our item, we've got the tax over here, and the right-hand side is the other tax column that is empty right now because I don't have anything in there. So I'm going to move over to the report here and say, if you create a work order and you post it to an invoice and it creates the invoice, then you are paying taxes on the amount that you haven't received. So that's the accrual system accounting that most people use. So in that case, when you have created a work order, don't post it over to an invoice until you are actually ready to receive money from that customer. okay, because that's accrual system accounting. The cash system accounting says, I only want to pay taxes on the amount of money that I've received. Now, the danger in that is that if your taxes go up, then whatever you're holding in accounts receivable, you have to pay the difference on the taxes for all of that amount. So, you know, your accountant will let you know which system is best for you, and you can talk to them about that. So let's go back to the main menu again. We're going to take a look at the accounts receivable. There are two different reports that you can use for the accounts receivable. There's the invoices and there is the aging report. And if we took a look at the aging report, and we can click on aging, it's going to show us a screen, our screen up, and it's showing you all the different people that are in here. And then you have a choice that you could either send an email to this person, and if you did send them the email, on the main menu in the invoice section, there's the email message that you can adjust that's going to be sent, so that when you send that email, it's automatically going to say, Dear Jamie, you know, here's your invoice, here's your notice. And we'll go take a look at that email in just a moment. And then there's also the printed copy that you could send to them. And if you did send them the printed copy, this is what it looks like. So we've got your business logo at the front. And what it's going to do is going to say, this is the invoice date. You had this invoice and this was the amount that is not paid on it. Okay, and then second invoice that was added to that, this is the amount that was not paid on it, and it has a running total going over in the balance on the right hand side. They could have also had items that were due within 30 days, right? Within 30 days, up to 60 days, 60 to 90, and then over 90. So you could technically have money that's in all of those. They would also have credits. If they had a credit where they paid, you know, $10 on it, or, you know, $50 or something. So then it would take the credit and show the credit that, yes, you have made a payment on here. But the total amount is what we're showing here, and that's the amount that shows on the screen on the report. Now, if we decide that we wanted to go with the other report, that's the one by invoices, and these reports are also available on the invoice screen over on the left-hand side. So when you click on accounts receivable report, that's where you can select the one by invoices. And it gives you two options here. The top one is your current total, saying, yes, this is what I need to do. The bottom one, though, is for those times when you say, I forgot at the end of the year to know what my accounts receivable was at that time. So this is going back in time to that snapshot to say I need to go back in time, what was my accounts receivable as of that moment, and that's the bottom portion of it. The top portion, though, is to say I want to find everything for this month, or a specific date range, and then I can click on the proceed button and it's going to give me a list on here. Now I did enlarge that so that it's a little bit easier to see, because I know there's small numbers on there. So that it's going to give you the invoice numbers, the date, who it was sold to, the sales tax amount, the payments that they've made, and what the balance is owing. Again, your totals are up at the top so you can easily see them. You're not sifting through a number of different pages all the time. Minimizing that. And I want to go back, so since we're on the invoice screen, to show you a couple of buttons that are helpful as well. One is that if you are in the list view on the order and you're thinking, I want to see all the money that's owed to me, the fastest, easiest way to do that is to click on this button at the top that says Find and Sort Unpaid Invoices. And when you do that, it's going to ask you, I have some items that are marked because I wanted to call them or take a look at those orders, and it says, do you want to unmark them right now? And I'm going to say no, leave them marked, I'll go deal with them later. But in the meantime, it's giving me a list of every single invoice that's unpaid, and down at the bottom of the screen I can see my totals of the money that is owed to me. Now, if I do have a person in here that owes me money, and I happen to be on their invoice, and you look and they have a balance due down here in the bottom right-hand corner, but in the top right-hand corner, there's another number. This is the number, the total of all of the money they owe you from all of the invoices that are unpaid. And if you want to see all the unpaid invoices that total up to that amount, all you need to do is click on that number, because it's actually a button. When you click on it, it finds all of their unpaid invoices that add up to that total. fast, easy to see. And the reason that we had done this was because you may have had a customer who owed a little bit amount. They came in to pay off a small amount on one of the invoices they had, and then you realize that they still owed you $20 on another outstanding invoice. So that when somebody is paying off an invoice, if you do see that number in the top, that while they're there with a credit card in their hand, that's a good time to say, did you want to pay the other invoices that you owed as well? Going back to the main menu, the other thing that's really important is the end of year. There are a number of reports that you should be taking a look at the end of year. And for each person, it's a little bit different what you want. We have on our website, and I'm going to include that in the email that's sent out to you, a link to which reports to run at the end of the year. There are a number of them, but one of the ones that I think is really important is the customer reports, that you know who your best customers were for that time period, your sales reports, choosing which of the sales reports you want to run, and then also your accounts receivable, knowing what your accounts receivable is. And one of the best suggestions that I think we have for you is that when it is your end of year, make a backup of your FrameReady program. Save it onto a USB, label it that this is the year 2020 or the year 2019, and you've got a backup so that if you do need to go back into your FrameReady program and run some reports, because maybe you need to run your inventory reports for either your products or your molding and framing supplies, you can do that, and they haven't been changed, because you can always go back into that backup to see them. Super. Carl, are there any other questions that anyone may have?
There's been a number of questions. My apologies. I'm new to the software and I didn't see where they were landing. So,
okay.
So Julie Walsh asks, is there a quick way to run a year-to-date comparison report of this year versus last year?
No, and that's one of the things I know that I've been thinking we should add in a report here that compares. We've had people that have been using FrameReady for almost 20 years now, and it would be so nice for them to be able to do comparison reporting. The only thing that you could do right now is to run whichever report you want to run, save it as a PDF, and then you'd have all those PDFs. But I think that's a great suggestion, Julie, for a new feature in the program.
And one other question from Mehdi Bandana. Can the sales clip only include business days and not all the days of the month?
The difficulty in that is that it doesn't know which days you're open when it's calculating that formula. There might be a possibility that they could go in and determine based on, under operations, which days you're open from the week, but then it would have to know the exact calendar for that month to know how many Sundays and Mondays are in that specific month for that year. So it might be a little bit too complex for it to be able to do that at this moment. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar, which will be in the new year.